Good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping that you can all hear me. It is great to see you on what is a bright, sunny summer's evening with me, a bit of summer solstice action for us all. And great to see you all here joining the English Mastery EEF recruitment webinar. It is a really exciting time for us because we are entering the final couple of weeks for our recruitment activities. So hopefully those of you who've been following our campaign, those of you who've been following the program and the EEF recruitment trial for the last few weeks, this will give you a fantastic opportunity to ask any final questions that you may have, learn a bit more about the program, and then we'll be looking to talk to you about how you can join the trial starting in September. So really exciting and great to see so many of us here today. Hopefully hopefully you can hear me. So I'll let one of our co-hosts let me know if there's a problem. So I'm Nick Wallace. I'm the head of secondary delivery at Ark Curriculum Plus, and I'll be your pilot for this afternoon. And we've got four main things that we'd like to talk you through today. So give you an overview of who English Mastery are, how we have impact, and a bit more detail about the English Mastery program. We'll then talk through an EEF trial that took place in 2019. We've got some really fantastic findings that we're going to be able to share with you as we go throughout the session. And then we'll spend some time at the end looking at the 2022 trial and how you and your schools can participate, or how you and your team can participate. And we're going to finish off today with a slight change. As soon as I finish my presentation, we've got a couple of members of the team who'll be able to talk to you about the trial and how it can work with your own context. So to start off with, about English Mastery. So Ark, pardon me, I went a bit too quick. English Mastery launched in Ark schools back in 2014, just coming up to 8 years ago now. We had a real focus on designing and launching an English curriculum, but not just a curriculum. We wanted to put together a continuous professional development offer, an implementation infrastructure, and assessment framework to really support the teaching of English in our schools. What we also wanted to think about was how we could scale that program. So we started in Ark schools, but you also want to think, how can we have that impact more widely? And I'm pleased to say that over the past 8 years, we're working with over 200 schools across the country. And in 2019, as I mentioned, the EEF chose to run a randomized controlled trial with us, which was unfortunately disrupted. But great news for everyone here today, we're running a new trial starting in September. So we're part of the Ark Schools Multi-Academy Trust. We're part of Ark Curriculum Plus, which have a number of mastery programs. I'm sure you've heard of Mathematics Mastery, started by Dr. Helen Drury 10 years ago, and Science Mastery and some primary programs too. We have impact across the country. Our mission, we're a charitable organisation, we're a non-for-profit, and we have a charitable mission, and that mission is to empower teachers to give every young person the subject knowledge and the skills that will allow them to succeed. So we have a real commitment to and a real belief that the teachers make a difference to students, and we have that commitment to empowering teachers, and everything that in all our partner schools, we have a real focus on empowerment and working in partnership with teachers and with schools. And we've got some, we'll illustrate that hopefully throughout the session. I'll give you a very brief history lesson of exactly where we came from and how we came to exist. So way back in 2014, we undertook an audit of all of English teaching across the Ark network and also beyond our own context. And we found a few really interesting things. We saw that pass rates were good. So we got a high percentage of students getting those C+ grades back in 2014. But importantly, progress was not great. We weren't seeing students graduate throughout secondary school at that rate that they should have done based on that key stage 2 data. So we were hoping that those students many more students would be going on to get B's, A's, A stars, but we were just capping them at a C grade. So progress was something that we really wanted to address with the program. We also found, and we see this in schools today, I think, lots of key stage 4 was spent making up lost ground in key stage 3. We spent a lot of time in year 10 hearing teachers say, it just feels like I'm starting from scratch. It feels like I'm doing things which they should really know and should really be fluent in already. We also see, again, a challenge that continues to be prevalent today: the most experienced teachers being deployed on GCSE, and that can lead to a void of clarity, progression, consistency around what that key stage 3 provision looks like. And to illustrate that, here is an illustrative program of study for key stage 3 from one of our schools. We can see a hodgepodge, a patchwork approach to curriculum. We can see here in the first one, it might be an autobiography unit on year 7, and we just talk that forever. We've got some old random assortment of resources from different teachers. Next unit is a reading assessment on The Landlady. Maybe we've cribbed that from a couple of resources on Teach It. We then got a theme park unit, and maybe we've just pulled a range of different resources from TES. And then in the spring term, teachers go to the store cupboard, pick a novel from the store cupboard. Which one do you fancy teaching? Do that with your students, and that can lead to a real lack of consistency. What is that curricular entitlement for students across Key Stage 3? What is that? Where's the consistency of quality thinking, and how can we see the curriculum acting as that progression model? How can we see really carefully and really thoughtfully how each text builds from term to term, from year to year, so that students do enter year 10 with that fantastic foundational platform upon which to build? We had all those insights back in 2014, and we were really buoyed in some regards by the 2015 report from Ofsted, Key Stage 3, the wasted years, which really summarised those challenges that we found. It's also true that we're in the midst of a workload crisis. So a recent DFE report into workload found some really troubling insights. Nearly 40% of teachers listing planning as an unnecessary burden. And to get what exactly does that look like? Well, we see duplication and bureaucracy at the heart of their frustration. It tends to be, why am I writing this lesson plan? Well, it's because SLT demand this particular pro forma to be uploaded onto our T drive 2 weeks in advance of teaching. It isn't really helping my reflection. It isn't really helping me think about my pedagogy, but it is just a paperwork activity that I have to do to administer because it's a requirement for my senior leadership team. And that led to that bureaucracy in that teacher's frustration. We also saw in that report that teachers spend about 8.8 hours per week on lesson planning. And even though this isn't a maths mastery session, you'll see that that's not PPA, right? You don't have that much PPA as a teacher. So teachers spending weekends, evenings, a lot of discretionary time, going above and beyond planning for their students. And if you cut that up on a lesson by lesson basis, we're looking at, for a typical teacher with maybe a 20 lesson workload per week, that's only about 17, 18 minutes of planning per lesson. And if most of that is spent generating a lesson plan and a pro forma, we can see there's a real small amount of time that a teacher might actually be thinking about, how am I going to make this part of the curriculum really live and really breathe for students? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 40 seconds, 50 seconds in the chat. Are any of these challenges that I've just narrated, do these resonate with you? Are these challenges that you and your colleagues have faced at all over the past 12 months? If you'd like to pop that in the chat, and we'll see if these are challenges which continue to resonate with you. Great, thank you. I'm a very slow typer, so I do leave time. I hadn't frozen there. So Nathan says when he speaks to schools and trusts and groups of schools, many of these challenges seem familiar. Katie saying, thankfully we've moved on from much of this. Absolutely, and I think the workload in particular. I think the curriculum as the progression model, the new inspection framework, I think has really helped to move the sector forward in many regards. We struggle planning due to no time together as a department. Again, how can we have that collegiate approach? How can we have that collective group hive mentality almost of an approach to curriculum when we're so pressed, especially with the GCSEs, and a lot of really directing our attention over the last couple of months. Working as a team to overcome these 3 curriculum reviews to streamline what paperwork is produced. Great, thank you, Kelly. Also, a huge amount of time though, a huge amount of time for us to really approach that holistic way. And Claire saying planning from scratch is the burden, not planning in itself. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting comment about the nature of what can planning look like. Is it a resourcing activity, or is it a moment where we're looking at making the curriculum live and breathe for students? All right, thank you. Some more chat. There's some more comments in the chat, and I may return back to them. I may come back to them shortly. Thank you. So we saw these issues, we saw these challenges that we wanted to address, and we went in the English mastery team. We went away and undertook like a research review and thought, what exactly does education research, principles of cognitive science, tell us about how we can really grasp these challenges head on? So we had 6 areas we really focused our attention. Subject domain, how we learn to read, how we learn to write, assessment pedagogy and some misinformed practices, and how we can establish a really rich and thriving community around that professional development offer. And that led us to some of these seminal pieces of research, many of which I'm sure you'll be familiar with. So Sweller and cognitive load theory, Michael Young's discussion of powerful knowledge, Isabel Beck and her work on tier 2 vocabulary, Hart and Risley, the 30 million word gap, Dylan Williams' work on assessment, Daisy Christodoulou, who was one of our founding members, etc., etc. I'm sure there's names there that you're really familiar with. And that then fed into some of the intent of our program. How do we want to structure this program? How do we want to make sure that we maximize the chances that it has impact on teachers and on young people? And that led us to our 4 pillars of mastery. We take a knowledge-rich approach to teaching English. We separate the teaching of reading and writing so that language instruction has a real clear and explicit focus. We do a lot of work around tier 2 vocabulary instruction to close the word gap and to allow students to read with better fluency, understanding. And we also see that assessment has a critical role to play in identifying gaps in students' knowledge, skills, and if we're able to take that really meticulous and granular approach to assessment, we can identify those gaps in knowledge when they arise and close the gaps much sooner. So all of those pillars cut through every single part of our curriculum program. And it is a complete curriculum program. The curriculum resources, that progression framework is just the beginning. We also have lesson guidance, resources to support teachers, and a comprehensive training package that we use, where we work in partnership with schools to allow schools to really own the curriculum and to really help teachers to make progress and become more successful, effective, and more effective classroom practitioners. Again, that's we offer a complementary assessment protocol as well, so that teachers, school leaders can be really confident how and where that program is having impact in the classroom, and how and where we can really think carefully about moving forward with the curriculum materials too. To talk about the curriculum progression, here is a 10,000 foot view of our curriculum map that cuts through year 7, 8, 9. And we can see some of the text in the curriculum map, but we can also see, when we're describing a knowledge-rich approach, that we call our shots. We say, this is the knowledge that we want students to really be mastering, to be really grappling with. And here are the moments we want them to really capture, master these concepts. And what that leads to is we can be we can have greater expectations and much clearer expectations of how and where students make that progression through the curriculum. So let's take our Victorian literature strand as a case in point there, to see how that knowledge is cumulative and how that leads to a really powerful impact on the student level. In year 7, Oliver Twist, one of our first literature unit that the students study in year 7. Here we look at the city, characterization, antagonists. Bill Sykes and Fagin being two of the most, probably the most famous villains in all of literature. And with that knowledge, when students approach Sherlock Holmes, we can see that understanding of London, of how we establish character, how we establish heroes and villains, really coming into play with Sherlock Holmes. Irene Adler is a great example of someone who Sherlock Holmes butts heads against, but she isn't a typical villain. She isn't villainous. She isn't evil in the same way as Sykes and Fagin are. So how can students refine and reflect that knowledge of Antigonus for year 7 in year 8? Building on top of that, we look at scientific developments, Jon Snow and the Broad Street Pump, the Sherlock Holmes's dual nature, his energy and also his introspection. And again, that knowledge accrues into year 9 too. When we explore Jane Eyre, we can layer all of that knowledge from the previous 2 years on Jane Eyre and also consider Victorian morality, attitudes toward childhood, and how exactly Bronte is perhaps satirizing some of those approaches throughout Jane Eyre. And regardless of what literature text your students will go on to study, I hope you see that that powerful knowledge is going to offer students such a fantastic foundation upon which to build when they enter year 10, 11. So regardless of where we're looking at Jekyll and Hyde, Christmas Carol, Frankenstein, that powerful knowledge from Key Stage 3 gives students such a high platform upon which to build, so they can access those texts and really consider the more challenging themes of those novels at a much quicker pace. All right, what does that look like in terms of a student's impact? How do we see that in I'll pause there. By having that knowledge mapped out across year 7, 8, 9, by being so confident and clear around what's taught when, we can then do some really interesting and rich things around the study of English. So this is a sample resource from our Jane Eyre unit of work. And here we're exploring the notion of heroism. We know that we've explored The Tempest, Animal Farm, Oliver Twist earlier in the curriculum, and we can begin to ask some really fascinating English questions with a knowledge of that, with the understanding of what students have already studied. So we can say, look at these characters that we've already studied in this curriculum. Which of these could be described as heroes? Are they all perfect heroes? Are any of them complex heroes? Could we describe any of them as tragic heroes? What is the nature of Boxer's heroism versus Oliver's heroism versus Jane's heroism? And to have those really rich, engaging, dynamic, like those spider web conversations that are so fantastic and make up such a rich part of our study and our scholarship in English. And that's one of this is a sample, just a tiny taste of how this approach to curriculum design can lead to some really interesting discussions in the class. And it can also lead to some really great outcomes for students. What I have here is an example of a student's essay in year 9. They're writing on Jane Eyre. They're writing a question: how does Charlotte Bronte present Jane's childhood experiences? This is a closed book assessment, an unseen assessment. What I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and in the chat, could you just drop a couple of things that you can see this student doing really successfully? So 2 minutes, read through this passage of a student's essay. What does the student do really successfully? All right, thank you. So while you're typing, I'm going to narrate exactly how the curriculum can lead to this standard of writing. It's no surprise. This isn't an accident that the student is writing with this level of sophistication, with the direct quotes, with the critical religious reading, with the embedded context, with the understanding of how it's reflected in the novel. In year 7, on that curriculum map, we look at how to compose topic sentences, how to use evidence correctly, how in Oliver Twist we see the mistreatment of orphans, how writers can use novels to convey a moral message, poor sanitation and disease having an impact on society in the Victorian era. In year 8, we build some more knowledge. We look at how we can link analytical paragraphs. We consider how to use those topic sentences to link analysis across an essay, how to embed quotations. In Sherlock Holmes, we think about status in Victorian society, and the students are considering that here. In our writing mastery, we look at how to compose multiple subordinate clauses to articulate complex and nuanced ideas, how to establish a balanced argument, how to explore a topic from multiple perspectives. Then in year 9, throughout their study of Jane Eyre, we also look at how you can compose a thesis and sustain that throughout an essay. We look at the apostrophe of possession. We look at how to avoid greengrocers' apostrophes. We explore in detail the temptation and fall of Adam and Eve and the role that that has in literature. We also look at specific attitudes towards childhood, the notions that a child is born innocent and pure versus a child born in sin versus a child who's a blank slate. We also look at some vocabulary with Brocklehurst being a Christian and also a moral hypocrite and how exactly Bronte plays with that character. And we also explore some further Victorian diseases. So this again is to illustrate the impact of that cumulative knowledge-rich curriculum. We can say this is how and where we want students to be grappling with these ideas, and then we see it in students' practice. We see it in their performance when they're writing about these texts. And we can see the student really engaging with the text, not just its themes, but this is obviously a student who's really enjoyed that study of Jane Eyre too. And I can see there's lots more comments in the chat as well. So again, just to emphasize, it's not a surprise. It isn't luck. This is a core. This is all content that's been taught throughout the curriculum. To talk briefly about that's an overview of the curriculum progression framework and a little bit on some of the assessment materials and the lesson guidance and resources. We've also got that comprehensive complementary training and development offer that runs alongside the program. And it's all about allowing teachers to add that final foot to really place themselves into the curriculum. So it isn't just the Ark English curriculum, it's their own school's curriculum program, it's their own teachers' sense of ownership of the text. So this, just to iterate, that curricula will be strong in intent and implementation, where teachers have a dynamic relationship to the knowledge that they teach, and our programs really support teachers to establish that dynamic relationship. And that's from Christine Council in the Research Ed Guides to the Curriculum, which is a gripping read. I'm sure it's on all of your summer reading lists when you're on the beach in the Mediterranean. So to come back to some of the discussions earlier about planning and about the how we can change what and how we spend what we do during that planning time to make it a much more higher leverage opportunity. Here are some activities which we often see teachers describe that they do: making a worksheet, making a PowerPoint, writing some questions, reading through students' books, reading the chapter you're about to teach, annotating that chapter, doing some secondary, tertiary reading, closing a teacher's own subject knowledge gaps. Now, if you're a busy teacher, you've got a busy day tomorrow, you've got 6 lessons, and you're planning that in average from the DFE's workload survey in 1 hour 45 minutes, and you've got 17 minutes and 30 seconds per lesson, which is a really, really small amount of time. We know from discussing with teachers, the thing that gets prioritized because it is a stipulation of the school is often making the worksheet, making the PowerPoint presentation. But there are some items on that list which are much more powerful, which will really allow students to engage with much more criticality, much more kind of energy with the curriculum. I'd propose that reading the chapter you're about to study, doing some secondary reading, closing your own subject knowledge gaps are more important than those 2 resourcing activities. And then if you wanted to go to a tier above that, thinking about questioning specific questions for specific students, anticipating the misconceptions which may be arising, and then developing some questions to avoid those pitfalls. Looking at students' exercise books, seeing exactly where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. So again, really tailor that instruction to the specific needs of the students in the classroom, and annotating that chapter perhaps with challenging vocabulary, perhaps with a challenging passage, considering how to make sure that students can really understand and engage with that chapter as well. So the difficulties that we face is how exactly do we spend that planning time, and supporting teachers to move planning from that resourcing activity into that critical, pedagogical, rich activity is again a key feature of our program. So we offer really considered implementation frameworks, and our co-planning document is one example of that. And we invite schools to dedicate an hour a week, which is a big ask. We invite schools to spend an hour a week thinking about the curriculum, thinking about implementation, thinking how can I make this passage, this text, really sing and really meet the needs of the students in our classrooms. We also have anytime access teaching overview videos on our learning platform, where we get teachers or the English mastery team to narrate, here's what's happening in the upcoming part of the curriculum, and here are some really rich activities and consider how to plan for these activities in your classroom as well. And we see that as a chance to really geek out, to consider what is it about our subject, what is it about English that we really love, what is it about that we love teaching, and how can we bring that joy and our own personal interests back into the classroom. And that approach to professional development, that approach to working with schools, has been highlighted and identified by the Education Endowment Foundation as best practice. So for those of you who've read the Effective Professional Development Guidance Report published by the Education Endowment Foundation last year, I believe, you can see English mastery as a case study there. And that we've been picked out for thinking about how we develop teachers' knowledge across the partnership, and how we consider teachers' cognitive load as they're working with the program. So again, we see that as a real vote of confidence in our approach to supporting teachers, working with teachers, empowering teachers, and having some external verification of those approaches. We know today, 2022, we are in the wake of the most disruptive couple of years to students' education that any of us are likely to see in our lifetimes. And there are no shortcuts in how we can help students make better progress, how we can accelerate them back up to pre-COVID ways. The only thing that has ever made a difference is high quality teaching. That's the best way that we can mitigate any learning loss. And that's where our program offers that commitment to teachers to really support them to become really effective classroom practitioners. And we've got a commitment to synthesize all of that education research into our program, so it's there for teachers to access, engage with, and implement in really convenient, accessible ways that has really great impact on their students. So let's talk about impact on teachers and on students. Back in 2019, the Education Endowment Foundation wanted to run a randomized controlled trial of English mastery to assess the impact that our program had. We had 97 schools, and in a randomized controlled trial, half the schools had English mastery, half of them didn't. And the idea in a randomized controlled trial is we compare the difference in attainment between those who do English mastery and those who continue with their own curriculum as usual, and we see which group of students makes the most progress. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we weren't able to make robust estimates of English mastery's impact on pupil progress. We didn't sit that assessment. We couldn't get that X months progress, but but our independent evaluators did undertake extensive interviews with teachers, and we got lots of really great insights into the impacts that English mastery has. So I'm going to talk through some of those insights, and bear in mind that these are findings from an independent evaluator. These are really robust measures or robust kind of figures that tell us exactly what teachers perceive the program's impact to be on themselves and on their students. So these are it's a really high watermark of research credibility. We saw that teachers said English mastery helped students make more progress. 74% of it made them better at grammar, 63% reading, 68% writing, and 75% of it helped them to make better progress overall. And for a independent evaluation, these are really, really, really compelling figures. These are really, really kind of industry-leading figures for independent research. To put a little bit of texture for this, what does that look like for a teacher? What do teachers say? So here is an interview from a teacher. Key words that the curriculum builds on: corrupt, naive, and malicious. We've seen students retain that knowledge from year 7, which has been amazing. You can see that there's the impact of that retrieval and interleaving. That's been really impressive. So teachers identifying that cumulative curriculum really having an impact on the students. We also see teachers really think that the curriculum is effective. 89% of teachers saying our literature curriculum is quite or very effective, and 73% saying our writing curriculum is quite or very effective. Again, really, really, really high figures for an independent evaluation. And again, here's a quotation from a teacher: my subject knowledge with grammar, how we teach grammar has improved hugely. Speaking with other teachers, I think they too agree with that. Subject knowledge to do with teaching grammar, we've all improved 100%. So again, that grammar, that writing curriculum, really supporting teachers to develop their own subject knowledge. How do teachers feel about English mastery? 81% would recommend to another school. 84% are satisfied with that training and support that we offer, that partnership relationship we have with schools. The English mastery team give really excellent feedback and get down to the nitty-gritty of what our problems are and how to iron those out. It's brilliant, actually. So again, entering into a partnership with schools, really understanding your school's context, the area you're serving, your department's needs, any challenges that are specific to your school. And then, because we've got such a wide partnership with schools, we can draw on that experience, that expertise, draw on a wider network to really support you directly to make sure that program is having the best impact on your students. And this is one that personally I think I'm probably most proud of, particularly the context that we faced over the past 2 years. 80% of teachers saying it reduced their planning and marking workload. And to be able to support teachers to deliver better lessons more effectively, to allow them, give them a bit of breathing space, is something which I'm personally really proud to be able to support teachers with over the last few years. What does that look like? So discussed earlier about how we can change what planning looks like, change the nature of that activity. And this is exactly what teachers said. What we're able to do now is think about how we deliver that curriculum. That's something that's empowering, to be able to not just think about the nitty-gritty of PowerPoint slides. We're actually able to think about how we deliver that content. It's the ability to think about it as a teacher rather than someone who has to design PowerPoint slides is very liberating and a far better use of a teacher's time. And I want to dwell on this just for a second, because it's something that notion of empowering teachers, a resource curriculum being something that unlocks more interesting, dynamic, innovative practice, is a misconception that we really work hard to address. A lot of teachers are worried: is this going to inhibit me? Am I going to be able to bring myself to this curriculum? And we see here, and we see it across a partnership, that English mastery empowers teachers. It allows them to have that great sense of ownership of the curriculum. And that this quotation from a teacher, I think, really drives that home. All right, so we are currently, I hope, I'm going to pause for a sip of water. We've spoken there about how the program is structured, some of the impact we've seen on students, and what the independent evaluation of 2019 by the EEF says about the impact we're having on teachers and students as well. I'm delighted to say that due to the really promising results, with promising findings from that 2019 report, the Education Endowment Foundation are funding another 2-year randomized controlled trial of English mastery. The trial aims to assess the impact of a knowledge-rich curriculum on pupil progress for September's Year 7 cohort, and it will also consider how the programme contributes to reducing teacher workload. So it's a retrial of the programme. As in the previous trial, it's a randomised control trial. So it places schools into two groups, the treatment group and the control group. I'm going to now talk through what exactly that looks like. If you're an English mastery treatment group, half of the schools are allocated into the treatment group and the control group by Sheffield Hallam University, the independent evaluators. And it's going to evaluate the impact of the programme on September's Year 7 cohort. And it's going to follow them through Year 7 next year and into Year 8 in academic year 23-24. To be part of the trial, if you're in the English Mastery treatment group, you'll pay £900 per academic year, which is a significant saving of over 80%. You get access to our full Key Stage 3 English programme. You get access to Year 7, 8, 9 content, but we're only looking at the impact on your Year 7 cohort. You get access to our training, induction, in-school support visits, remote development sessions, our assessment, professional development, a huge, the full English Mastery support programme. The control groups will be randomly allocated and will not be able to deliver English Mastery for the next 2 academic years. But control schools are absolutely critical to research, and they will receive £1,250 on completion of all the data requirements as an acknowledgement of the time invested in participating in the research activities. So the schools receive that payment of £1,250. Are you eligible? I hope so. To take part in the trial, your school must be an English state school, non-selective, have a Year 7 cohort in September and a Year 8 cohort a continuous cohort that goes through into Year 8 in 2023-24, and you may not have delivered English Mastery in the past. That's an important one. So that's if it's tick 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 tick, then you are eligible to participate. You are volunteering to take part in education research, and following on from today's session, we'll issue with a memorandum of understanding. That's your ticket in to the randomization, and this is the detail in that memorandum of understanding. It's a bit of a tongue twister for 4:30 for me. So in that memorandum of understanding, here are some of the here are the commitments that we invite the English Mastery treatment schools to commit to. Participate in the trial for 2 years, pay that programme fee of £900 per academic year for the 2 years of the trial, deliver the 3 curriculum components, literary heritage, writing mastery, reading pleasure, place students into ability pathways. We offer guidance to that. That's we can discuss the specific context of your school there if that poses too great a challenge. Nominate a senior leadership team champion to advocate for the programme and its ongoing implementation. Attend our induction training in September. Participate in our ongoing training programme that lasts throughout the 2 years. Sit our curriculum assessments, our termly assessments that are linked to the curriculum. Timetable department planning time for the department, and host support visits from English Mastery. All of which I hope you would be really, really excited to do. But that's we need to just place a clear framework around the implementation requirements. If you're a control school or a treatment school or an English Mastery school, there are some additional research activities that will invite you to commit to as well. So take part in all stages of the evaluation and have a named key contact to support the evaluation. So we've got people in school that we can talk to about the data collection. Distribute data processing information to parents and students, and be responsive to the needs of the independent evaluator. So that would just be respond to emails, pick up the phone when we need to get in touch with you. So the salesperson in me I have and I have to do it. We have got limited places available, and we've got the window for application closes next week.